Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Reading the Past live stream. I am doing this through StreamYard, so I'm hoping that everybody can hear me, see me, and it looks like there are 29 of you in the house tonight. If you hear me sounding a bit nasal, that is because I came into contact with dust a day ago, and this is how I sound when that happens. So we are going to struggle through, and maybe occasionally a little bit sneezy, but we will battle on. And I am very glad to see you here. And I am trying to figure out how to work everything that's going on. So do bear with me. I will make time today. First of all, I want to talk about the things that we got up to in 2022. I also want to talk about plans for 2023 and then leave some space at the end for some questions, some Q&A time before we wish each other Happy New Year in preparation for coming back in 2023. I'm seeing where people are coming in from. I did just want to say I'm seeing a lot of people coming in from various parts of the United States. And I have been following the news very closely, and obviously there was a great deal of concern for people who are in the affected areas because of the weather. So I do hope that you are as safe and warm as possible. I am under the impression that the worst seems to have passed now. And it's lovely to have you all here. Most of my audience I can see in my YouTube analytics is from the States. So I do obviously think about you a lot and want to make sure that you're all doing as well as possible. Did everybody have a lovely Christmas, Hanukkah, if you celebrate? I'd love to see some comments about that. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year to everybody's families. I hope you all have a lovely Christmas period, Hanukkah period, festive season, shall we say, and that you are all having a lovely time, and that Santa / whoever brings you your presents did their job correctly. It seems like people are having a lovely time in the Christmas period. John, a lovely Christmas. Yes, see, I can put comments up on the screen as well. How lovely. I had a lovely Christmas. It was a small Christmas. It was my husband and my son and our friend for Christmas. So Gabriel turned 2 in September. Where has the time gone? And so he still has presents that he has yet to open because he was so overwhelmed and also had so many presents that we are still making our way through unwrapping them so that he gets a chance to play with them. But we did have a lovely time, and my husband cooked because he cooks every meal, because I am not skilled in the kitchen. I have lovely attributes, I'm sure, but cooking is not one of them. So he does all of the cooking, and he cooked a Christmas feast for us all, and we had a lovely time. And I think everybody had a lovely time as well. So we've had, what was that? Let's see this. We've got Christmas full of sound, 6 nephews and nieces under the age of 6. My goodness, that must have been pretty intense. I hope you all had a lovely time, and I hope that the children didn't get too overwhelmed. I think that many kids must have been a very loud experience. Your son came home for Christmas, or your kids home for Christmas. It was amazing. That is lovely. How wonderful. I'm glad that people are having lovely Christmas times. The comments are coming in thick and fast. I'm going to try and keep track of what's happening. I will be taking question G. Do you know what? I'll chuck one up now. Why not? It's New Year's. It's festive. Let's chuck in a question right now, as there's one here. How is working as an interpretive person has the experience of changing your interpretation of the history you're portraying? So I believe you're referring to me doing live costumed historical interpretation. And I think it's definitely had an effect on the way I understand history. I am very careful about using that experience to say that this is definitely true, because while the costumes that I am wearing and the things that I'm doing and the stories that I'm telling and the places that I'm in are close to the historical truth, they are as close as we can get. Buildings have changed over time. Hampton Court Palace is not the palace that Wolsey or Henry would recognise. And the clothing, very little survives from the time. So what we are basing that on is portraits. So we're working in very good, but still best guesses. So I have to keep that in mind. But there is something about moving with that weight on your body in those spaces, knowing the protocols that were at play, that does have an effect on how you view people in the past, and certainly stories about how they moved around. And I think that there's certainly, I'd like to do some more work. I'd love to fill a space with people in Elizabethan dress where all of the ladies are in large scale farthingales and all of the men are wearing rapiers and daggers. And I want to know how they got around each other when they're all sort of so wide at the bottom. And do they dance with their rapiers and daggers on? There is some reference to things like dancing rapiers, which seems like they may have been lighter and shorter, because while rapiers and daggers are obviously weapons and they have that purpose, they are also, particularly at the very upper echelons of society, they are part of the outfit. So while I think there has been an assumption that they would be expected to take their blades off at court, I'm not sure. If you're spending hundreds of pounds at the time to have this beautifully bejeweled rapier and dagger pair that matches the outfit you're wearing, why on earth would you hand it over? Also, where is it being kept? By whom? How does it get back to you? I think it would be like asking somebody when they come in and they're wearing a beautiful diamond brooch or necklace to be like, well, actually, you've got to take that off to sit down for dinner. So that doesn't make sense to me. It may be that has to happen. But we'll only know that, I think, by putting a bunch of people in a room dressed like that and seeing how they manage with each other. I'm just having a look at the comments. Lots of comments about Happy New Year, beautiful sunny days. Oh, wonderful. I'm glad to see you all from all over the place. So let me just, I've got banners, you see. So let me just chuck up my banner. I want to start the conversation by thinking about what happened in 2022 on this channel. Now, I have got a notebook and I have also got a pencil, because I would be very interested to know the sort of content that you liked on this channel from last year. What particularly caught your eye? What sort of stuff was it? Biographies? Was it more kind of responses to questions that I'd received? So if you can chuck in the comments the things that you enjoyed, things that you would potentially like to see more of in 2023, I'm going to chuck some notes down about that. But I'm also going to see what other comments we've got going on. We have a great comment here. Do I use Goodreads to track and review books? I don't have a book recommendation list and I don't have a Goodreads, but I probably should figure out how to do one. I don't really know how Goodreads works, and I will check it out and see if I can find out how that might be. Because yes, I probably should. I have a lot of books. This is maybe like a third of, not even that, quarter of my books. You can see, well, actually, on these two shelves, it's a quarter of the books that I have. So I can certainly do a Goodreads list of books that I think you should check out, and I will. Can you put a little pricey down on them? Let's see. Oh, here we go. We've got. Oh, Silo 48 degrees here. Is that hot or cold? I don't know what that means. Cold? I'm going to go with cold. Could I make a video about the Delhi Darbar and the Imperial Crown? I don't know much about it, but I will make a note. I'm making my notes now. Thank you very much for that idea. Because I do love to make the content that you want to watch. Because while I make the content that I enjoy talking about, part of the point of it is that people are going to watch it. So I don't want to make stuff that people aren't interested in watching. Obviously, that would be a foolish thing to do. So there we go. Okay, perfect. Let's see what else we got. What else have we got? So biographical episodes and those about the important buildings. I've just realized actually that if I do this, it will be on the video. So I haven't got to make a note. I can just flag up the ones that I'm going to make notes on later. And I will watch this back. And we like the monthly news. Penny, I'm going to stick a pin in this because I want to discuss this for what's going to be new in 2023. I have news and plans for the news in 2023. And I hope that you're going to like my idea even more than what's currently happening. More stuff on the kings and queens, certainly can do that. I can certainly add in some other queens and kings that we have had in our history. If I read Kindle books, Goodreads is connected to your Amazon account. Is it? Interesting. I will investigate. Thank you very much. The lives of individuals surrounding the monarch and the lives of ordinary people. I mean, I love making that content. I really do. And it's something that I seek out as much as I can. The big problem is that when it comes to making a video that's more than 10 minutes in length, lots of these people, the biographical detail is really lacking, particularly the further back in history you go. So perhaps, though, I can seek out maybe a group of people, and we could talk about a circle of individuals, and as much as possible avoid degenerating into pure supposition, but with people who aren't making decisions about war and peace and national boundaries and things like that. It's sometimes hard to keep a full track of their lives, and so sometimes we have to hop and make guesses and assumptions. Say, for example, a great one I think is Thomas Cromwell. Obviously, we know quite a bit about him when he joined Wolsey's service. We know even more about him as he joins Henry's service and rises up through the ranks there. We do have some kind of missing years in between. So we have this legal knowledge. I have seen it suggested, and I think it's very appropriate, that he was likely, and I think that Hilary Mantel also believed this from the way she wrote Wolf Hall, that he probably worked as a mercenary. So this was somebody who was fairly quick with the violence and capable at violence, which I think is interesting, that you have this person who potentially can do both, who is cunning in the extreme, who is a solid, educated Machiavel, but who is also capable of potentially extraordinary acts of violence. And I think that's an interesting way to think about him and some of the choices he makes, maybe. Oh, by the way, in that corner, no, that one. I am very bad at orientation. In this corner, you will see there is a logo. I had to go at designing one. This is the Reading the Past live logo. It may change, but I fancied having a go at it. So I've got a book and a little hourglass with the Reading the Past over the top. And I think it might be my logo / watermark for a bit until I can maybe think of something that I like better. And so there we go. Thank you, G. I am always asking myself questions. I'm always assessing, and I think all historians should do this, that they should assess the way they're approaching the history. I say it fairly regularly that we can't approach history apolitically. We can't do history without bringing ourselves to it. And anybody who claims that they are somehow impartial is either actively lying and knows it, or they're just kind of a bad historian who can't really see the wood for the trees. I don't think it's possible to be impartial. I think that everybody brings a lived experience to it, for better and for worse. So I do try and keep myself mindful of my personal politics, but also of my lived experiences. I know that I have a greater empathy and sympathy for people like Jane Rochford. Oh, that's a bit whiskey in my teeth there. Catherine Howard, Anne Boleyn, because of the extraordinary lengths and judicial murder that they were subjected to. And because of my beliefs about violence against women, because of particularly my beliefs about capital punishment, there's never going to be a time where I'm going to go, well, it was justified. And I will say, here are the reasons that are given for a person's execution. I don't think an execution, even if it's a product of the time, I'm never going to be a person that's like, yes, they deserved it. I just can't bring myself to say that, because I wouldn't say it about a living person today. And they were living people. They were somebody's baby. And so, yeah, that's the way I have to bring that to myself, I think, and recognize it and acknowledge it. We're hearing about what 58 is middling warm. Well, thank you very much. So people are liking the news updates. Fabulous. How am I doing today? Bit snotty, as you can probably hear. I had a lie-in, which was delightful. My son has been at home all day. My husband's just taking him out for a walk. They like to go and watch the ducks in the local park. So he's been shouting for ducks for about an hour before they went out. So he's now having a lovely time. We have here biographies, especially Anne Askew. More biographies or history of the different Christian movements, Methodists, Anabaptists. I can certainly, I'll be honest, I will have to look into that. I know a bit about Puritans. Sorry, little nose blow. And I can definitely look into the other religious orders, because it does become quite a kind of confusing situation. And so, yes, I think that's definitely worth, particularly as we approach civil war and its aftermath, the diggers, the levelers, all of these people that are coming out. And I think also what it means when somebody is being called an atheist in this period, and when most solidly atheist is a term that means what we understand it to mean. When do people start self-identifying as atheists is an interesting one, because I'm not sure, and that's something I'd like to look into, is who is the first person on record to self-identify as an atheist. So that's something that, making a note on here, in fact. The demise of Amy Dudley. I like historical mysteries too. If people have historical mysteries they'd like me to look into, please do drop me a link on Twitter or drop me an email. There, it's all linked in various places. And let's see what we've got. Biographies. So people are liking the biographies. Can I do more on Queen Victoria's life? I certainly can do more on Queen Victoria's life. This is one of the things. Why do I avoid talking about Queen Victoria? Because I do have a natural aversion to her. And that's not fair, because I don't know her. I never met her. I do think it's weird for people to either love or hate people who they never met. But there is something about Victoria that makes me go, oh, for God's sake, get over yourself, woman. But I would work hard. And I think also looking at things like the Kensington House system to understand what made Victoria, I think is very interesting. I have done some videos on the Elizabethan portraits. Happy to do more. If there's a portrait in particular you would like me to talk about, do let me know, and I will certainly put that on my list for sure. You'd like to know how the UK teaches history to children? Well, it's constantly in flux. It changes pretty much every time we have a new education minister. And as the flux in our who's on the front bench is constantly changing, it's quite hard to keep track of how the UK teaches history to children. I can certainly talk about what we do in heritage sites, which is connected to the curriculum, obviously, but it is an ever-changing and moving beast. More Shakespeare, please, for sure. I can talk about him, his players, the plays they put on. Let's see, where are we? We've got lots of comments. I'm going to, oh, hello. Beverly, thank you ever so much for your kind comment and also for your donation. That's very, very kind of you. And I'm glad that you have enjoyed this year of content. And I'm very pleased that you never miss a video. With that in mind, while you're here, do make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell. Select all in the drop down to make sure that YouTube tells you when I next upload. That would be wonderful. We've had jump. Could I do a video about historical weapons? Certainly I can. The Ditchley portrait, I can definitely talk about that, particularly why it's commissioned. I think that's very interesting, because I think it tells us quite a lot. We talk a lot about how Elizabeth shapes her personal identity, but then what that feeds into, of course, is that then the way people who are commissioning portraits to win her favour, to win her forgiveness, as in the case of Ditchley, they are sometimes maybe potentially starting new narratives or connecting her to new flattering things. But also they're going to be reworking stuff that's already gained approval. Because if you've already annoyed the Queen, then perhaps you're going to look at other notes and other portraits that have won favour and try and do something similar so that she doesn't hate you anymore. Sorry. LGBT people in history. Yep, certainly I can do that. It's in the Tudor period, potentially a more complex thing. We have the minions and favourites of people like Edward II. We have the favourites of James that I can certainly talk about, and James himself. It's very difficult, though, when we talk about the language, because, again, none of these people are potentially self-identifying as homosexual or lesbian. So then we have this question of, I think, if somebody doesn't self-identify or out themselves, if that's not how they understand themselves, what does that mean for us reading them through that lens? And I think that's perhaps part of the conversation that we should and indeed could have. You'd love to hear my take on the controversy surrounding the Koh-i-Noor. I can, yeah, definitely. I can talk about it. I will have to look into the various claims that are being put out, because as you rightly say here, that several states have laid claim to it. So I can definitely talk about that some more. Charles Brand is one of the best videos. Thank you very much. I did let my small amount of rage out there. So maybe I can just be free about my dislike of people. Maybe that's fine. Do I think that history is really written by the winners and is that fair? I think that it has been. I think that increasingly we are relooking at certain narratives and stories. I think that we are looking at hidden histories more. And when you start looking at hidden histories, that's not about winners and losers anymore. That's something else. I don't think it's fair. I think it's understandable. I think that we need to be encouraging more diverse voices to be engaged with history. One of the reasons why over the last 50 years, if I'm being kind, 50-ish years, we've seen a real uptick in narratives about women in history is because there were more female scholars being admitted into universities, gaining professorships, etc. So when you have people who want to uncover that history because they see themselves in those people, I think we get a much broader history. So a key thing, I think, for a diverse history, and perhaps something that approaches a more balanced history, is to have an incredibly diverse group of people working on that history. But it's also important to remember that the history that's taught at school, the curriculums, are set by the governments of those places. So it's impossible to have an apolitical history because politicians, certainly in this country, and I believe everywhere, politicians are setting the curriculum. Politicians are saying what goes in where and what doesn't. So when you have that, if you're teaching history politically, I don't know how you can become apolitical in your understanding of it, perhaps. Maynell, I believe, is how you pronounce it. If I've said that wrong, I'm very sorry. Thank you very much for the super sticker. It's very kind of you. I'm incredibly grateful. Thank you so much. Like more on everyday life for all the different classes, their food, clothes, housing, work, worship, etc. I could certainly do that. Let me see, how can I put this up? Let me see. There's lots of comments. I'm going to have I done my family tree? I haven't. There have been family trees done in my family, and I think there may be up the tree, there may be a murderess, because she starts off married to one brother who then disappears, and then she has children and marries another brother. and the first brother disappeared. So there we go. Oh, here we are. I'm going to I've said thank you for this one. Thank you very much. It's this is how far back I am. So I'm going to do a quick speed through. So thank you, Beverly, very much for that. And thank you so very much as well. Thank you for the super sticker. And let's see what we have. Let me see. Let's go back up a bit. As an American, I don't have a picture of what court was like. I do have a video on how court functioned. I will see if I can link it in the comments of this after this video becomes on the channel as a video you can watch. I did talk about how court functioned, the Tudor court. Of course, as you move through history, courts function slightly differently. But broadly speaking, if you have a king and a queen, you have two households. And within those households, you have their private attendants, usually members of the gentry, all the way up to the upper nobility, people who are handpicked by the king or queen to be their confidants and companions and to do acts of service for them. Whether that's helping them get dressed in the morning, serving them food. And this is a kind of ceremonial service that people want to do. People want to have this proximity and closeness to kings and queens because it helps them get their political agendas met. In the wider household, you have a litany of people: laundresses, wet nurses, kitchen staff, dairy maids, gardeners, etc., etc. What you would imagine with a really large, I suppose, hotel of which has got enormous grounds and can have thousands of people staying there. And so that's how the court works. But then, of course, the court moves. And so some of the lower servants may well be attached to the original house. So as you go from house to house, the households come, so the king and queen's households, but the servants may differ because they work in that household. So the kitchen staff of Hampton Court perhaps won't be the kitchen staff at Nonsuch, for example. But it's possible that the king, Henry VIII, might take his chef from his privy kitchen. That person may come with them. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. See. The narrative in England about those who jumped at the Great Migration of the early 17th century, good riddance or cream of the crop. I will have to look into that because that is not something that I've studied very much. It's not something that has come under my area of study and my purview, but I can certainly look into it. So thank you for putting that down. Okay. Do I believe that William Shakespeare wrote the plays he's credited for? I do. And at the moment, I'm happy to say that if other evidence were to present itself, I'm quite pleased if there was sufficient evidence to change that understanding. I think it's interesting that we have positioned him as a person who is an imposter or a fraud. I have talked about it in the authorship debate. It's not something that I've staked my career on because we know so little about William Shakespeare's biography that ultimately talking about the plays, because I don't really talk about them in relation to William Shakespeare's biography, I talk about them much more in relation to what's happening in England and the wider world. And that's going to happen regardless of who is writing them. It's possible that if it came out that it was Bacon or Oxford or even Elizabeth, for example, or Marlowe, then we may have to reassess or add something on to our understanding of the plays because of that. And principally, that's because we know more about those individuals. So we have more biography that potentially we could then layer over our understanding of the play texts. But as it is currently, we know quite little about Shakespeare and who he was and what he did. So it doesn't necessarily matter that much to me anyway, who actually wrote the plays. But I do believe it is the son of the Glover, the man from Stratford. Monarchs Anonymous is, for those who don't know, the Monarchs Anonymous channel is something that I was part of and is still going on. Everybody has become very busy once again. There are definitely plans to revive Monarchs Anonymous, to do another series, to do some bonus episodes, and also potentially to see where else we can take it. And an episode between Henry VIII and Elizabeth would be spectacular. I absolutely agree. I will certainly talk to Nadia and Josh about doing that. Oh, we've had a jump. Mm. Am I still planning on making videos about the Sultanate of Women? I absolutely am. And I will, it's going to take a bit of research because, again, it's not my particular area of study. And so I'm going to have to do some in-depth looks. Alex, I have done a video on Bess of Hardwick. I think if you go to my channel and search Bess of Hardwick, that video will come up. So that will be there. Empress Matilda, Isabella of Valois, and or Isabella of Castile. I don't believe I've done any of those. So I will certainly, that's going to go to my list as well. Thank you very much, Raven. The exiled Stuarts. So the Jacobites, very interesting. Yes, let's look at the Jacobites. Let's do that. What do I think about the recently unearthed Queen Neith in Egypt? Well, it's, again, Egyptology is nowhere near my area of study. So I'm very interested to follow the assessment that's going to come out of it by the trained Egyptologists and archaeologists who are working on that site. I think that the more we find, the more we understand about these people who lived so long ago. So I think it's always going to be very interesting, very exciting. And I look forward to seeing what the local team and the university make of it. Let's go. Can I go straight down to that? Rob, I can see your comment, but I'm far back. I'm going to hop. Here we go. Rob, thank you ever so much for that. I've got a long list of video topics. Love to see one on Elizabeth Stuart. Are you referring to Elizabeth Stuart, the Winter Queen? Because I think she's also a very interesting figure, particularly her being the reason why we get to the House of Hanover. So yes, let's have a chat about that. And talk about what the sweating sickness might have been thought to have been. Yes, let's do that. Let's have that conversation. And what else have we got here? More podcasts on History After Dark. We will be back in the new year, and we will certainly be there. If you don't already check us out on History After Dark, just want to flag it up. It's a very different vibe. I am obviously going live here, so there is that in common with History After Dark. And on this channel, I'm about to start talking about my plans for 2023 because lives are part of the plan. I just want to very, very clearly set out that when I go live with my friends on History After Dark on a Wednesday evening, UK time, it's a very different vibe to what's going on here. History After Dark is over 18s content. It's our chance to not be PG-13. It's our chance to occasionally do some swears, well, frequently do some swears, be a little bit smutty and insulting, and just to also hopefully be educational. We're having a lovely time doing it, so you can follow us. We stream now on YouTube and also on Instagram, History After Dark. If you search us, you can see our back catalogue, and we will be back in the new year to cause chaos. Yes, I would. This is in relation to talk about the sweating sickness. I would love to get a tame GP who'd be prepared to come and talk to me about the sweating sickness. I think I don't think they know, to be honest, because I have talked to people who have got a medical background, and I'm like, so what's the sweating sickness? And they're like, what are you talking about? Because if they haven't got an interest in history, then they have no idea what I'm referring to. So they're like, what, they get sweaty and die? I don't understand. So I would love to have that conversation. People loving History After Dark. Yay. We have a good time. We have a really good time on History After Dark. What about some on location bits? Do you know what? Let's change the banner. Let's change the banner. And as you can see, we're very loosely sticking to the topics here. Let's talk about plans for channel content in 2023. So certainly, I want to do some on location stuff. I want to go places. I'm starting to make friendships with people who are curators at some really interesting historical sites. So I hope that I can sit down and interview them and perhaps talk about some lesser known parts of the histories of their buildings. I'm particularly interested by the way in which we take historic sites and then interpret them. So I'm quite interested by the changes that have been made, particularly for a Victorian audience. Because that happens a lot, particularly at the Tower. There's stuff that happens there that makes it look more medieval or more visibly medieval from the inside, shall we say. And so thus less historically accurate. So I think that's something that I'd be very interested in doing and talking about that and how we experience those places now and where the gap might be and what our expectation of history might be and how that potentially is affected by and also affects the way that buildings are interpreted. Rob, thank you so much for the sticker, the donation. It's very, very kind of you. I'm very, very glad. Thank you. It's very kind. For a 26 video, you might want to consult a medical historian. I think that's a very good point. A medical historian is the one to go for. I will see who I can track down and strong arm. And one more about History After Dark. We love the depravity that is History After Dark. Well, Raven, so do I. Very, very much. Please visit Randy, babes, if I had a chance to go to the States, that Roanoke, trust and believe that Roanoke is up there. I want to go to Plymouth Rock, Plymouth Plantation. I know they've got interpreters there. They've got and also Colonial Williamsburg. I know there's interpreters there as well. I want to go and see how interpretation is done in the States. So yes, Roanoke is top of my list. John, that is incredibly kind of you. Thank you very much. That's absolutely not expected. And it will certainly, all of these donations are going to go into the Travel History Fund. I want to get myself, I've invested in a gimbal for my phone. That's my sign for a gimbal for my phone. So I'm investing in one of those. I also want to get a lighter weight camera, some better mics so that I can interview people. So that is definitely something that I want to look at. A trip to Jamestown, yes. Would I consider reviewing historical novels like Dan Jones's Essex Dogs? I mean, potentially. The big issue currently is that I have a 2-year-old and he is very wonderful, but he doesn't give me a lot of time to read / listen to podcasts or audiobooks, which is pretty much the way I'm reading currently is audiobooks. But I would definitely be interested in reviewing historical fiction like Essex Dogs. But again, that's so subjective because it's whether or not you like the interpretation. I think it's fascinating when historians do historical fiction. I really enjoy it. Rob was talking about Elizabeth Stuart, Winter Queen. Yes, indeed. We can look at her for sure. People want to look at the food, including the desserts. Oh, we could definitely have a chat about that. Maybe I can see if I can locate somebody who, I do know a few people who work in food history, so maybe I'll see if they will let me jump on their bandwagon and have a chat with them. We've got some super stickers from Nancy. Thank you. Incredibly kind. Absolutely unexpected. Thank you so much. Again, this stuff is all going into improving the channel, finding new ways to do new things, paying for me to subscribe to StreamYard so that I could do it so I can have all the bells and whistles that I need. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you again, Maynell. Thank you for that. It's really kind of you. Very, very kind. Chris, better late than never. Thank you for thank you for coming. And of course, this is going to be up on the channel after we've finished, so you can check it out there. Gina, thank you so much for the super sticker. Thank you very much. Plymouth is literally just a rock, but don't they have interpreters there? Am I wrong? But there are interpreters there. My dream would be to try and talk to Cheney McKnight, who I've seen on YouTube. I think she's absolutely fabulous. Oh, I'm glad, Maynell, that I said your name correctly. Thank you. I always want to pronounce things properly, and I tend to ask Google. So if I'm not sure, I do ask Google about pronunciation. So when I get it wrong, it's because Google has messed with my job and my face. Book recommendations for historical books and or authors you find trustworthy. That's a big one. I mean, I love Tracy Borman's work. I think she's phenomenal. Neil McGregor. I talk about Neil McGregor all of the time. If you are interested in faith, Eamon Duffy is a phenomenal scholar. If you're interested in queer theory, one of the forefathers of the movement is a gentleman by the name of Alan Sinfield, who sadly passed away, who I was incredibly lucky to actually be taught by in my master's program. So if you're interested by the study of queer theory in literature, then Alan Sinfield's texts are ones to go to. But a lot of those will be academic books, so they are expensive. So you may need to get yourself to a copyright library to check them out if you don't want to spend like 150 quid on a book, because academic print runs are so short and they charge an absolute arm and three legs for them. DGKED, thank you very, very much for that super sticker. That's incredibly kind of you. Got here, Kristin is saying Colonial Williamsburg is a must. I've seen the footage that makes me think that's definitely the case. I'm going to have to talk my husband into taking a small child on a plane to America. That's a debate for a later day. Is that Asia? Thank you very much. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. It's so. I'm going to try not to get soppy. I'm since having a baby, my eyes are like a tap. I'm always just on the verge of tears. So I sometimes stop talking about things because I'm on the verge of tears. I am so grateful for this community. I'm so grateful for your support and for, oh dear, here we go. It's coming out of and going into the pandemic and losing the work that I love doing, which was historical interpretation. And now I'm back in historic sites. So that's okay. Chilling out. Okay. I built an amazing community in historic locations, and losing that during the pandemic was incredibly hard, especially being pregnant and having a really difficult time with my anxiety while being pregnant in a pandemic, which I think people can probably understand. I didn't have a great birth. I was very traumatized by it. So I had a lot of therapy. But having this place to come to and feel like a person and having all of you has been life-changing and also I think all mental health saving. I'm going to stop right now, but just thank you to all of you, and I'm going to stop being a silly goose. Chapuis and the other ambassadors are a rich source, but you can't find much online. Most of their stuff is in the state papers, so you can see some of the letters that Chapuis is writing if you go to British History Online and check out the state papers. So that's a good place, and I can also talk about that maybe. Maybe we can look at what's in the state papers. Elizabeth, thank you so much for the super sticker. I'm very, very grateful for that. Thank you. We should have a Bridgeton party when the new season is released. Let's all get Empire Line dresses and fart about. Let's do it. Book recommendations for people who have recently got back into learning history. Helen, that's a tough one. It very much depends on what floats your boat. What are you interested by? What other stuff do you like? Do you like true crime? In which case, go and buy Hallie Rubenhold's The Five. Are you interested by America and how it came to be? In which case, this is an oldie but a goodie. This is the John White watercolors in A New World. Check that out; it's fabulous. Are you interested by Shakespeare? Bill Bryson's the person to go to, I think, to get yourself back into Shakespeare. So it very much depends on what you like and what gets your juices flowing. If you like things like food history or living history, things like that, then Ian Mortimer and the Time Traveller's Guides might be your place to go to. So I hope that's interesting. Just want to say, when you do the casting call for that period dress ballroom experiment, I'm in. Well, wonderful. We're all going to be in English gowns, Tudor English gowns. No, actually, we're all going to be Elizabethan farthingales. So full ruff for everybody, and all the gents with blades. It's going to be excellent. There is a gentleman who cooks historical dishes. You are completely correct. I follow him. I also can't remember his name right now, but he's in my following list, and I love his. Is it Max? Yes, I love his content. I think it's brilliant. He is a very large channel, and I believe he's based in the States or Canada. So meeting up to do a collaboration, well, it could all be part of my Grand American Tour. And History After Dark have also talked about doing a Grand American Tour. Maybe we'll all get in the Winnebago and we'll make our own content, and we'll also, I'll just sod off for 6 months. Be like, Jamie, you hold the fort down here. Love you long time. Now, how do I pronounce that? M. Sandigale? Well, thank you very much for the super sticker. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you ever so much. Tasting History with Max. Yes, I watch it and I love it. I think he's brilliant. When he made the Roman fermented fish, I was like, you're very brave. You're very brave. I enjoy it. What do we eat in the UK for Christmas and for New Year's? I think a lot of people are obsessed by turkey. Traditionally, it was goose. We don't do either of those things. For us, we do smoked salmon blinis, because I like that for the starter. There's beef and chicken on our table. I think my husband would probably do a ham if I would eat a ham, but I don't really want to. And as my son's now obsessed with Peppa Pig, I feel like that might be a trauma for him to deal with. So we're going to avoid that. And then it's just Yorkshire puddings, roast veg, and then pudding, cheese. Because my husband grew up in France, our friend is also French. So there was a big, fabulous cheese course, and our pudding came from an amazing French bakery. So we sort of do not necessarily English Christmas. There's perhaps some more French influences there, which is lovely. Tiny humans are time suckers. Yes, it's amazing, because on the one hand, it feels like a moment ago that he was born, and now he is just running around shouting in my face, and he's very opinionated. He has most of them are, stop it, mummy, back off, mummy. And when I get something right, according to him, he will very aggressively say, that's right. Don't quite know where he's learnt that from, but I do enjoy that. Can we do more of the history what if videos? Yes, we can do some counterfactual history. I would very much enjoy that. Let's put that on the list for sure. Plymouth Plantation is interesting recreation, but Plymouth Rock is uninteresting. I am now learning potentially different places. One thing that I have to own up to is that my sense of geography is embarrassingly poor. Abysmal. So if people tell me that something's from the West Coast, I don't even really know what that means. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't understand temperatures. I don't know if it's dyslexia or just if that makes geography hard. It's very hard for me. Thank you, Andra. I hope that's how I pronounce your name. Thank you for the super sticker. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you very much. I've always been interested to learn about the when and why of actual religious freedom and when it came about in England, which monarch brought it about, and why was it forced upon them? What happened? That's a really interesting question that off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to, which is why I have chucked it up, because that is something that I definitely want to look into. What do I think about the money pit on Oak Island? I would love to tell you, but I don't know what you're referring to, so I'll have to look into that also. Raven would like a bookshelf tour that I have promised for months. I am lax. It will happen, I promise. And one of the ways it will happen is when I use some of these fabulous and wonderful kind donations to increase and improve the stuff I have, the equipment, that's the word I'm looking for. I can film that, I think, a lot easier and in ways that I think will be useful and potentially also as a live, which I'm just going to, Marianne, thank you very, very much. It's incredibly kind of you. I'm so grateful. Thank you very much. Bookshelf tour. Yes, The Five is a wonderful book. Shannon, I know you were promised a bookshelf tour ages ago. The reason why it hasn't happened is because I don't know how to do it on my phone. And this is my current camera. And it's just, the footage would be really abysmal and poor. So I want to figure out a way to do it that it doesn't look rubbish. So that is what's taking so long. It's going to be a case that I need to buy some more equipment and figure out how to use it. But it's definitely on my list, top of my list. I promise. I'm sorry. Have a good cry later. Come and join. I just can't tell you, watching things like Call the Midwife, I love that show. I add the Christmas adverts this year. John Lewis, they all finished me. I was done. Game over. I spend most of my life crying. It's my husband thinks he gets very upset. He's like, "Are you happy tears, sad tears? Why are you crying this time? Have I done something? Is something bad happened? Are you hurt?" I'm like, "No, I'm just feeling all of the feelings of everybody in the world, apparently," and it's quite exhausting sometimes. Morgan, thank you for the super sticker. Thank you very much. It's so kind of you to do that. Thank you. He sounds like a character. I think that's about my son. He is definitely a character. He does this thing. He looks at me. And I go, "You giving me spicy eyes?" And he goes, puts his head down and goes, "Ugh." I don't know why he does that either. To show the truth of history of Islam in the UK, John being excommunicated from Rome, there's definitely a history of Muslims in the UK and connections with the Islamic world and England, certainly, that I can do a few videos on. Elizabeth sets up relationships with various Islamic nations, trading relationships and letter writing relationships. And we also have evidence of Muslims coming into England, many of whom we know about because they were potentially forced to convert upon landing. So there's a triangle of churches that exist actually around the Tower of London. There was one in St Catherine's Dock, and then there's St Olave's and St Botolph's, all of which are connected to the conversion of Muslim people coming into potentially St Catherine's Dock. So that seems to be something that is going on, which I think is quite interesting. Let me just scroll. What I want to... Can I do something on the Lancashire witch trials? I can. I will have to look into it because it's not something that I know an awful lot about, apart from the fact that it happened. So I want to look into, and I've seen content made about it, but I definitely want to look into that more and understand it more completely than the stuff that I've seen. Oh, Sandy, thank you. Thank you. I will come and check out your channels. Thank you. Oh, brilliant. That's really kind of you. I'm really glad that I inspired people. That's lovely. Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. I'm going to cry again. Okay. Amy, thank you. Thank you, and Happy New Year to you too. I am going to... Here we go. Religious toleration for all Protestants, 1689. For Catholics, well, I think that's going to be a lot later. And also, where does toleration, because Jewish people were exiled from England in the medieval period, and then they are invited back by Oliver Cromwell. So when we talk about religious toleration, we have to then talk about all faiths. And people, for example, I've just mentioned that there were Muslims in England. Were any people allowed to continue practicing their faith? And if so, why? And whom was allowed to practice their faith? When were they, and where were they practicing their faith? A segment of Poets Corner, we can definitely do that. Maybe, I don't know if I'll be able to go on location. That might be hard, but we can talk about it nevertheless. Another art analysis, yes. William Hogarth. I want to look into some William Hogarth stuff for sure. This is jumping about this. Jason had a great question. If I could invite 4 queens to dinner, who would they be and why? I would invite Anne Boleyn. I would invite Catherine Parr. I would invite Caroline of Ansbach. And I would also invite Elizabeth I. That's who I think I'd invite, and it would probably be a row. I think. Thank you, Muggle1983. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much for the donation. Can I do a program on Catherine de Medici? I can certainly look into her. I know her very much from an English perspective, but I can definitely look into, because there's been a fabulous book, Blood and Gold, that's out that looks at her. So I can talk about that perhaps. And where are we? Eric and his desires to marry Elizabeth. Yes, I don't. My understanding of Eric is that he, as you said, was very persistent in promising that he was going to come over and court Elizabeth, and it never really materialized. And that also it's potentially for her a lucky escape, because to my understanding, he did become quite violently mad. I can certainly look into that some more, certainly. Thank you. Elf Daughter, thank you very much. You're really kind. That's really lovely of you. Thank you for the donation, and also for your kind comment. No one ever says Eleanor of Aquitaine. No, I mean, maybe if I knew more about her, and if I kind of had the grasp of her. I'm not a medievalist, so my kind of real understanding and grasp of history starts with the Tudors. So I mean, maybe I would be interested in having Matilda at dinner, but I don't feel I know her personality, or I haven't got as much of a grasp on understanding of her personality as I do on the ladies that I've mentioned. With Caroline of Ansbach, that comes from the fact that I played her at Kensington Palace in a full court mantua while I was up to 12 weeks pregnant. So that was interesting. Full court mantua, needing to pee roughly every 7 minutes, and newly pregnant. So also very, very tired, which was intense. I'm not gonna lie. We have been going for nearly an hour, and I haven't told you my other plan and why I have booked, downloaded, organized to sign up for StreamYard, which is what I'm streaming through now and managing these comments. The reason for that is because I think this is the perfect platform for me to change the way we do the history news. So the next history news video will be, as it always is, it'll be pre-recorded, coming out on the first Friday of January, because then I have got all of 2022 as a playlist. The completeness of it speaks to my heart. I don't want to start a new thing. But after that, my news videos are going to go live. So we're going to do it this way. And I'm going to do pull-ups of the news articles we're going to be talking about. And we will do them more regularly. So they won't be once a month anymore. So it's going to be in addition to the Friday content on a different day. I'm thinking probably Monday or Tuesday evening for me. We will discuss the history news headlines, and I'm going to organize it once in the same way. So it'll be updates, new news, and then I'm going to try and organize by time period, and then any events and exhibitions. So they will be more shorter videos with a chance for us to have a chat about them. Although, as I say, shorter videos, we probably are going to be on for at least an hour with every single one of them, because that's how how these chats tend to go, isn't it? So I hope that you will come along for that. I really want to check out how to do more live content. I want to be able to have these chats with you. And part of the reason was I've been really enjoying being in the premieres and live chatting, but I think it would be great to respond in person. So that is the way that I would like to try it. And if it doesn't work, we can always hop back to doing something that we used to do. So, Elf Daughter, will they be available post stream? They certainly will. I will make them into, they will once again be added to a playlist. So we will have History News 2023, and it will just be full of live videos. So there might be 2 for January or 4 for January. And they will all be like January 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever it's going to be, February 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. And we will see what works. And I am incredibly grateful every time for the individuals that send me links to news articles to focus on. It's amazing. And if I don't respond to you on Twitter straight away, having seen the news article, that is because I hold off and then I go back to the start of December. And as I'm prepping to do the news video and I'm making my opera playlist, which is the website I now use to organize it, my pin board, I go through it one by one there. So I'm currently in the process of doing that for January's video. So there will also still be opera pin boards for each news video that I will leave a link to in the description box of the live, and also the on top of that, in the aftermath, in the description box there. Chris, thousands talking all at once. I may be asking for trouble. I will try and respond to as many comments as possible. I will also see if I can slow down the chat because I know you can do it on YouTube, but coming through this live stream, I haven't quite figured out how to slow down the chat coming in, which basically means I think that somebody can't, they have to almost wait, I think 30 seconds or whatever before they can post a next comment, which shouldn't be too much of a problem, but it should just ease it down. Some famous Tudor composers. Well, the most famous one that springs to mind is Thomas Tallis. He is interesting because he is a composer of music, which in this time is a composer of religious music that manages to survive the Reformation and survive it at court. So he's an interesting figure. Henry VIII is also a composer, although he did not compose Greensleeves. Perhaps his most famous song is Pastime with Good Company. Inherited Stitches, how am I supposed to pronounce Holbein? Holbein is how I pronounce it. It's possible that there is a Germanic or European pronunciation, but I pronounce it as Holbein, Hans Holbein the Younger. So that's how I do that. I'm seeing people have just signed up for History After Dark. Lovely jubbly. So do that if you're feeling brave. Just once again a reminder, it's very different from here. There is some naughties, some swears. But we have a good time, and we do tend to behave ourselves. No, that's a lie. We don't behave ourselves at all. We are a bunch of degenerates. I like doing black work, and the specific method for it being double-sided is called the Holbein stitch. I did not know that. I think black work is absolutely beautiful, but I did not know it's called a Holbein stitch, which I suppose makes sense as it does feature in quite a lot of the portraits. We don't know who composed Greensleeves. So, someone. Yes, so Thomas Tallis, William Byrd, and John Taverner are also they are the composers that we know of from the Tudor period. So there is, I have heard this about King John potentially offering to convert to Islam to get military support. I need to look into it. I've heard it. I don't know how truthful it is and how much he actually meant it. So I'm going to make a note of it through this video, and I am going to see what I can dig up as to how truthful it is. I've certainly heard it. Sharon, thank you ever so much for the super sticker. That's really kind of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Very kind of you. Gold work is next level with the real gold wrapped around silk. Yes, that is very, it's very beautiful. This level of work that goes into things is just absolutely phenomenal. I think my son might be back from his walk, which is John Tavener is modern, is he? I went to a Tavener concert. Maybe it's because he was playing historical music and it sounded like that. I need to look forward. I need to look into that. But yes, so Thomas Tallis is the one that I'm familiar with, and also Henry VIII. So let's look into Tavener as well. I don't doubt that if you say he is, I agree with you. Looking forward to the new year. Thank you. I am going to have, I hope it's going to be a good time. Oh, that's, you can probably hear Gabriel. He wants to go upstairs. Daddy says he's not going upstairs. Tavener. I went to a concert of Tavener in the Brighton Pavilion in the year 2000. So that, do you know what? Now you said that, it definitely rings a bell. Tavener. No, Tavener. John Tavener is he dies 1545. John Tavener. There is a modern modern Tavener. So there's a John Taverner, and I went to a Tavener concert. Which one did I go to though? Did I go to both? I think I went to a John Tavener concert, the modern one, interestingly. This is why would you do that? There are two John Taverners. Interesting. So I'm going to, I wonder if they're related. That's, you know what, that's a research project for another day. Is 20th century to 21st century John Tavener a relative of the 16th century John Tavener? That's an interesting one. Elf daughter. Oh, that's not confusing at all then. I mean, how many Marys are there in the Tudor period? And when I was talking about the Buckinghams, the Dukes of Buckingham and the traitors, the fact that there are two Margaret Beauforts who both marry a Stafford. It should be illegal. It should be illegal. Raven is asked to look. Second Sharon, I would love to know your process for researching a topic. Maybe we can do a behind the scenes, almost like a vlog. I don't know. Let's try a vlog. Would that be the sort of thing that you'd be interested in? Follow me on a day of researching and working in education. Maybe we could do that. That could be fun. So, what are my thoughts on the Battle of Hastings not happening at battle? So, my understanding is it didn't happen on the bit that is labelled as battle. But again, my geography is poor. But it happened fairly near. I do know somebody who works for various battlefield trusts, so maybe I can see if they will be willing to talk to me about the location of the actual battle at battle. Wow, that's going to get confusing really quickly. Hayley would love a behind the scenes clip. Maybe I can even do it as some of my YouTube short content, and I can also put it on my TikTok as well. So we can see how we go. Another thing, I see lots of people reacting to things in their discipline on TikTok that they've seen. Is that something that would be interesting, me reacting to other people's history TikToks? And if so, maybe I could give that a go. I'm not quite sure how I'd find it. Maybe you could link me stuff to react to, and I could do a video on that as well. I want 2023 to be a year where I experiment with things and see what sticks, I guess. Cat Ag, thank you very, very much for the super sticker. Oh, and hang on, we've got a clarification on the Taverner thing. So I believe that they are spelt ever so slightly different, but they're both, correct me if I'm wrong, they are both pronounced. They are both pronounced Taverner. So unless you are seeing it written down, it's still confusing, because unless you're seeing it written down, John Taverner with an R, Tudor, John Taverner, which is it's said the same, isn't it? is modern. Reacting to history mistalks, right? In which case, follow me, people who have TikTok, because I you know how TikTok works. Those of you who have it, the algorithm points you in the direction of the stuff that you want to look at. Which for me, I'm on Mum Talk. I'm massively on Mum Talk, and also on my No Touchy Talk, which is the stuff that I make. So I don't get sent, apart from the lady who did the rounds for ages saying that ancient Rome was a myth or a hoax or something or other. I mean, I think she came up on everybody's For You page and also on their YouTube. So apart from her, I don't see a lot of historical mistalks. So if you see them, do follow me, do tag me in on them, and I can do a reaction video on YouTube. That could be fun, I think. Please continue to do no touchy touch warnings into 2023. We're not in the clear just yet. I will be doing no touchy touches for as long as they need to happen. What I am stopping doing is I am stopping referring to no touchy touches that relate to human remains, because I have made the decision. I made a decision a few months ago, and I mentioned it on my channel, that I am not going to show human remains on any of my platforms. I think there are people for whom that is necessary for the work they do. It's not necessary for me. My content is monetized. I have developed an opinion about the display of human remains for profit that means that would be incompatible with my personal ethics. So there will be no touchy touches related to human remains. I will cover historical human remains, although I will not show them on the channel in the human remain form. I will show coffins, I will show sarcophagi, I will show tombs, but no open coffins, no wrapped remains, no skeletonized remains. Not going to do that. And we have a suggestion, a name change, John Tudor for the Tudor one. Well, I have no authority, but you know what? Gavel, motion passed. Alert Wikipedia. Sister Krista, I mean, with the glaciers melting, we can stay busy with the viruses and germs, and my goodness, don't they keep poking around? Don't they keep? And on top of that, if they're not poking around with the prehistoric zombie viruses, then they are making robots with sweaty fingers that will definitely eat our face in our sleep. So there's plenty to talk about in the no touchy touch content, because it's very much become a just because we can, it doesn't mean we should, and we are, even though we shouldn't. And I think this is what happens when the humanities are being decimated, certainly in English institutions. That sciences without the humanities is something that I think we should all be concerned about. One is not more valuable than the other, and without one and the other, they both lack for it, I think. Human remains are sacred. I agree. I think that human remains are sacred, and I think that I can discuss what a set of remains look like. I can discuss the finds without showing them as a picture. I don't think it's necessary for the content that I make, personally. The sarcophagus found under Notre Dame, I think it's really interesting. I need to look into it, because it will be covered in the news review video for the first Friday of January, although I won't be showing the images, I will be talking about it. But yes, I believe they have found, I believe they think they've dated it. It's a young person, very affluently dressed. So possibly high nobility. So that's interesting. I'm looking forward to talking about it, if not showing it. I think also it's something that when there's stuff that I talk about that I think potentially requires a trigger warning, I will do that as well. I think that there are things that I want to talk about and cover that may connect with people today in ways that will cause them pain. And I think the very least that I can do is to tell people that this is the content. Like when I talked about the Finchley baby farmers, and I said this refers to child neglect, child abuse, and child death. There are going to be many people, very, very sadly, for whom that personally connects. And I don't ever want to blindside somebody with my content. Increasingly as well, I'm a big follower. I was a big follower of true crime content. I am increasingly questioning the ethics of profiting from a family's tragedy and a person's pain. I don't know where I stand on it, but I found myself stepping back from consuming it because I do have questions about the ethics of it. Jeannie could not. That's one of the ones that flags up for me. And that dirty boy, Samuel Pepys. Yeah, I mean, come on. And the same, we don't have Catherine Parr's remains because people couldn't stop poking it. And in the period where they started uncovering the mummies, people would be eating bits of mummy. It's just, we have not had the best relationship and the best history of treating corpses, human remains, with the respect that I think they deserve. And I think we need to constantly assess that and question it personally. Oh, I have not heard about the artisans involved with the repairs of Notre Dame. That's fascinating. I will certainly have a look into that. Lovely. I think reconstruction of lost sites is really fascinating. I'm also interested, and I want to do a video on sites that otherwise would not have people to be their custodians, so they have to be turned into something else. So when, for example, Wetherspoons gets a historic setting and looks after it and preserves it, or hotels, I'm very interested by the way in which people have to deal with that sensitively. Like, how do you turn a grade one listed building into something else? So that's definitely something that I want to have a chat about. A video on Edward I exhausting his captor's horses in order to escape. That's not a story I've heard, but I will definitely look into it. That's fabulous. The ethics of true crime feels exploitative, with unqualified voices entering the space for profit. I mean, that's part of my concern. I think there are some cases, though. There's the flip side of it, like playing devil's advocate, that some of these cases, if it weren't for amateurs getting involved, like I think about the program on Netflix, the Don't F with Cats. Would Luca Magnotta have been captured if it weren't for the diligent work of people, true crime aficionados, in their own living rooms? The capturing of the Golden State Killer, that required in many ways the tireless work of citizen journalism and true crime journalism. So there's a place for it, but I think that what's happened is there's just, the marketplace has been flooded, and it's all become all the fun of the fair. And I think that there needs to be, just the brake needs to be applied a little bit, and we need to have a little look around at how what we're going to tolerate, I think. Will I be doing a video covering the coronation of King Charles in May? If that would be something that people would be interested in, I can certainly do that. I am not an expert on modern constitutional monarchy. I have absolutely no idea how the royal household works. And to be honest, I don't think that there are many people that actually do, particularly not the modern royal household. A lot of this stuff is backroom deals and secrets. And far too often, people talk about protocol like it's not an evolving beast. Like all of this stuff, protocol, it's all made up. It's all made up, and it can change, and it will be changing. What was protocol during Her Majesty the Queen's reign, that protocol may well shift because her son is now king. And so the expectations and desires of the court and what he wants to happen, he will put his own stamp upon it. So people talking about protocol, it's a new monarchy, so it's a new king, so it's different. The protocol will in some ways evolve and change. Brilliant Institute lectures this year on forensics on BBC4. Yes, and that involved that amazing lady who's done loads of work on forensic anthropology and forensic archaeology, and she's also worked on catching sex offenders by using the vein and scar patterns on their hands. And I can't remember her name, but she is incredible, absolutely incredible. Talking about mummies on display. And the way I think about it, when you walk around museums and you see human remains on display, particularly pharaonic remains, I think to myself, imagine if the Vatican came to England post-Reformation and said, you don't get to keep the remains of Edward the Confessor, Henry V, any of these Catholic kings. They're no longer yours because you're not a Catholic country anymore. And what you are doing is a defilement. We're taking them. Can you imagine if the remains of the great English monarchs were all in the Vatican and people were defending that? People would be bursting a blood vessel in their eyeball at the very thought of it. But we are doing something very similar, I think. Yes, mummy powder was regarded by some as a cure-all. It was also put in paint, Edwardian paint, earlier. So yeah, mummy brown was a paint color as well. I will certainly do something on Oliver Cromwell, the guy who was definitely not a king. Definitely not a monarch, not doing any of the monarch stuff apart from all the other stuff that he did do that was very, very monarchy by a different name. That's her name. Thank you very much. That is Sue Black. That is wonderful. Manda has just made a comment about something that's happening on Twitter and TikTok about a world famous misogynist who seems to be getting his just desserts, allegedly. And so I can't be sad about it. Tony Robinson was big on the Cosmati pavement. So the Cosmati pavement in Westminster is utterly phenomenal. And I believe it was actually originally fully refurbed for the wedding of William and Catherine. I think it was displayed then, because for decades it was under a carpet. But yeah, that is a beautiful pavement. And I can certainly talk about that. What if George Washington was under glass in London? Quite. Very, let's see. Ooh, I recently attended a wonderful talk by Amber Butchart, who is a phenomenal scholar. I absolutely adore her Stitching Time series. How incredible is she? Forensic textile analysis for solving crimes. Now, Tammy, I wonder if you can let me put another comment in. Do you know if it's available online? Is there any way you can link it? That sounds absolutely glorious. I want to check it out. My favourite plays by Shakespeare in the, I suppose, situations allotted to them by Hemming and Condell. My favourite comedy is probably Midsummer Night's Dream. I think you can't go wrong with Midsummer Night's Dream. It's just brilliant. My favourite tragedy is the Scottish play. I'm not going to risk saying it, just in case. I say I'm not superstitious, but I definitely am. And my favourite history play It's probably Richard III, actually. I think it's a phenomenal play. And I was very lucky recently to go and see it at the RSC, and it starred a disabled actor. So an actor who did, in fact, have a limb difference. And it was really interesting to see that played, because it definitely, those lines where when it's not an actor who's wearing some kind of prosthesis that that's visibly a prosthesis, when you hear somebody being insulted for their limb difference, particularly in the 21st century, the whole audience kind of goes, "Oh, this is uncomfortable. This is unpleasant. I don't love this." Oliver Cromwell was my 7 times great uncle, direct descendant of a sister of his. So does that also mean, am I correct in saying that Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, or is he the gunpowder? Is he related to all the gunpowder plotters, or is he also related to Cromwell? I know he's related to people who either try to blow up Parliament or kill a king. Why did the Vatican have the letters of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn? Man says they were considered in the divorce case. Yes, but also they were smuggled out. So that was not they were not given over willingly. It's interesting that we don't have Anne's responses. So I think what that points to is that somebody in Anne Boleyn's household was in the employ of the Pope, the Spanish ambassador, somebody who wanted to potentially derail the divorce process, and those letters were stolen from Anne Boleyn. I think Henry's, if whatever the responses from Anne were, Henry managed to keep hold of those, I believe. And I think that he probably they could, of course, turn up. We're always finding things in the back of archives. There's a lot of stuff in the bowels of museums and libraries. It's very possible that something might turn up as a response. However, I think anything that he had of Anne, if he got his hands on it, he burnt it or destroyed it. So we probably don't have those because they weren't stolen from him, because somebody they were kept more closely guarded than Anne's were, I believe. So Tammy says, it was part of the recent Tudor Taylor conference. Oh, wow. I mean, that's a book I've got as well, the Tudor Taylor. Haven't got the most recent one, but I have got one of them. Fabulous. So this is what we're talking about, where this is incredibly well researched reconstruction based upon the available evidence. And the available evidence is mostly portraits, of course. So there are some pieces. So, for example, when it comes to stays, thank goodness we have the stays that were on the effigy of Elizabeth I. Otherwise, it's very rare for you to see a portrait of somebody in their undergarments. So actually knowing how Elizabethan stays worked, what they look like, these pairs of bodies, it's very important that this exists for us. So that's vital. But otherwise, you are kind of reconstructing from a two-dimensional image to try and make something that's three-dimensional. Did Jane Seymour really serve Catherine Aragon in 1532? I'm not sure. Well, Catherine would still have had ladies attending on her, even though she wasn't queen. She was still dowager, according to Henry, Dowager Princess of Wales. So there would have still been a necessity for her to have a household. I'm not sure who's part of it, though. I need to look into that. It may be part of the lore and legend that Jane Seymour supported Catherine Aragon and thus Mary. But she certainly serves Anne Boleyn. She's certainly in the household of Anne Boleyn during her time as queen. Kit Harington is related to the inventor of the toilet, yes, who is John Harington, who was Elizabeth I's godson. And he does create arguably the first flushing toilet in England, although it doesn't really catch on. And it's got a cistern, but I believe it's lacking the U-bend, which I think is a later, maybe Victorian invention. So yes, that is John Harington. But I do think that Kit Harington is related to people either involved in the gunpowder plot and or the Civil War. Kit Harington is a descendant of one of the gunpowder plotters, and I think he's also a descendant of somebody on the royalist side as well. So I think he descends from both of them. If I could do a project any historical location, what would it be? Theatre or research? If I could do a project at any location, I would want to put on a full court mask, Ben Johnson, Inigo Jones, reconstruct the set, reconstruct the costume, and I would want to do it at the banqueting house in London. That is what I would like to do if I could. Let me see. Hang on. S ooh, ooh, ooh. I saw somebody talk about how, thank you, Violet, how, I can't find it now, how Anne Boleyn and Henry both wrote to the Pope to consider the divorce case. The letters that we're talking about are their, I think in this case, are their private letters to each other that they certainly wouldn't have wanted the Pope, would not have wanted the Pope to see. But he does because I think they get stolen by somebody. Oh, do you know what? My husband suggested that I do a video on a dream modern day cast for a historical piece. And so I think this would be a great one to do. If I could create a series about Henry's wives, if I was redoing Henry and his 6 wives, who would I cast as the main players? So who would be Henry? Who would be all the 6 wives? Who would I cast as George Boleyn, Jane Rochford, etc., etc.? Who am I going to cast as those people? I think that would be a really cool video to put on the channel, and so I might save that and do that on the channel. Well, friends, we have been talking now for over an hour and a half, and I hope that you have had a fun time. I've certainly had a fun time. I think I missed some comments. There was some jumping about. I hope I got enough of them. I'm just going to put up another banner, a little reminder. So thank you all for joining this live. Thank you for chatting with me. Thank you also for the gifts, for the lovely stickers and comments. I'm incredibly grateful for you spending your time here and for chatting with me and for being here every week as well, and for supporting the channel in the ways that you have. It really, I'm going to not get emotional, I'm going to be a grown up about it. It really does mean the absolute world, and I love how knowledgeable you all are. I love the suggestions for videos for things that I have sometimes never even heard of, certainly ways I've never even thought about making content. So I am so incredibly grateful, and I cannot wait to see what 2023 brings. I'm looking forward to putting out more content, going live more. So for me, it's New Year's Eve Eve. It's 5:30 p.m. New Year's Eve. So tomorrow is New Year's Eve. I hope that wherever you are in the world, whatever time of the world in the world you are, I hope that you have a very, very happy New Year. That 2023 starts with a helpful and happy bang, and that your 2023 will be healthy, wealthy, and happy. So, and whatever you may dream of it being. And for now, thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you for your support this year and hopefully into next year. Please do make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and comment. I have noticed in the algorithm that if you comment on the video, if I get lots of comments, then it tends to boost it. So I get more people watching. And if I get more people watching, hopefully I get more people subscribing, and thus the platform grows and the community grows. Maybe I get a chance to come travel the world and come actually meet you all in person, which would be a dream come true for me. So do all of those things. But for now, I will see you all in 2023. Very happy New Year. Thank you again, and bye-bye.